Nehemiah, the story of the man who would not come down. This is the story of a burden that became a calling, a ruin that became restoration, a people who rose from shame, and a God who still rebuilds what looks too broken to stand. The wall had been down so long that brokenness had become familiar. The gates had been burned so long that exposure felt normal. People passed the rubble every day and kept living around it. But Nehemiah heard the report and could not keep living the same. That is how calling often begins. Not with a title, not with applause, not with certainty, but with a burden that interrupts your peace. He was in the palace, but his heart was in the ruins. He had access to comfort, but comfort could not quiet the ache, so he prayed, he confessed, he waited, he carried the burden in secret before God opened the door in public. And when the moment came, he stepped through it trembling, not fearless, faithful, not certain of the outcome, certain of the God who called him. When he reached Jerusalem, he did not pretend. He did not decorate the damage. He did not call rubble restoration. He walked the broken places at night and looked honestly at what needed to be rebuilt. Because God does not heal what we keep hiding, and he does not rebuild what we refuse to face. Then Nehemiah spoke hope into a discouraged people. Come, let us rebuild. And something awakened. Hands that had grown tired reached for stones again. People who had lived under shame stood up under purpose. The work began, and so did the opposition. Mockery came first, then threats, then exhaustion, then distraction. But Nehemiah kept returning to the same center. Prayer, courage, focus, the Lord. When the enemy mocked, he prayed. When the workers feared, he reminded them. When the rubble felt endless, he strengthened their hands. When distraction called, he refused to come down. I am doing a great work and I cannot come down. Not because the work was easy, not because the voices were silent, not because the danger was gone, but because obedience mattered more than approval. The enemy wanted fear. God was building faith. The enemy wanted distraction. God was building endurance. The enemy wanted surrender. God was building conviction. And the wall stood again. What had looked permanent was not final. What had been burned was not beyond God. What had been mocked became testimony. That is what God still does. He rebuilds through people who are willing to carry the burden, face the ruins, and keep building. When coming down would be easier, so do not despise the burden. Do not ignore the ache. Do not normalize the rubble, and do not come down from the work God placed in your hands. What wall has God called you to rebuild? What burden will not leave you alone? What ruin have you learned to live beside? And what voice keeps trying to call you down? Because if God gave you the assignment, you do not have to come down. Pray, rise, build, remember the Lord, and keep your hand to the work. What has been broken can stand again. What has been burned can be restored. What has been mocked can become testimony. And maybe you were never meant to rebuild alone. Kingdom Factor peer groups exist for Christian leaders carrying real assignments, real burdens, and real battles. A confidential place to be strengthened, challenged, and reminded of the Lord while you keep building. Because the wall is too important for isolated leadership. You were never meant to lead alone.